this is really impressive. And I'm going to give her some praise here because, it's quite shocking.
And like I said, I've been holding on to this for a very long time because something happened all the way back in February, and I was sworn to secrecy temporarily. And I feel that today is the correct day to inform audiences because it may have some severe global implications. So here is what happened, all right? The date was Monday, February 24th. And in the early evening, I had just kind of wrapped the show. It was just after 5:30 p.m., to be precise. I received a very strange message from a friend of mine. I'm not going to identify that friend, but the message specifically read, "Hey, I have something to tell you from the White House. They asked me to call you. I'm just the messenger here." Again, strange. I'm just the messenger here, like kind of removing themselves from whatever was going to be said. So I assume it's got to be something weird. And I say, yeah, whatever, give me a call. And so he does call me pretty immediately, by the way. And he says, somebody very high up at the White House has asked me to ask you if, as a favor, you could stop speaking about Brigitte Macron. Like, what? Excuse me? I'm not kidding when I say that in the myriad of possibilities that were floating through my brain about what this phone call was going to be about, that was not one of them. So I'm just kind of having to redirect, and I'm going, oh, what are you talking about? To be clear, we had, ironically, as a podcast, we had just ended our Brigitte Macron series 4 days earlier on February 20th. That's when we released the last episode, which was the epilogue. So I'm going, that doesn't make sense. Why am I getting this phone call now? And obviously, I ask for a little more information. I say, who? Who specifically called you? And that friend of mine says, it's somebody that has the president's ear. This is somebody important. So I'm thinking, okay, this is advisor, Susie Wiles, I don't know. And I tell my friend, go back to that person and just say, I said no. It's free speech. This is obviously an important story to me. The implications here are pretty severe about what I've uncovered. So no deal. Hang up. I go into my husband's office and I tell him what just happened. And honestly, I'm kind of laughing at the absurdity of it because I hadn't thought beyond what may have happened. And then I do what I always do just in case. I call Noah. I call the lawyer and I'm like, hey, I know Macron's, sending us legal letters. Just want you to add this onto the pile that somebody at the White House is asking me to just stop speaking about Brigitte Macron. Cool. We kind of have a laugh about it, run it different ways. Are we going to expect something else to be delivered to my door? Another threat, implicit threat from the Macrons, somebody calling in a favor, who knows, whatever. Anyways, we do dinner and I am kind of feeling bad about my pregnant attitude on the phone call, because I was, 8 weeks away from birth. And I was a bit shorter on the phone than I would have been if there wasn't like a growing infant foot that's lodged under my lung. And this person has been very good to me in the past. And so I resolved that before I go to bed, I'll phone him back and have a much more calm conversation. Not that I was rude, but just like, hey, what's this actually about? And so I did. And not only that, before I called this individual back, when I checked online, I realized that Emmanuel Macron is in Washington, D.C., February 24th. He is in Washington, D.C., and he had departed the White House just hours before I received the call. So anyways, I am in awe. A lot of thoughts are running through my mind. What could this possibly be about? And when I call that person back, they tell me something that is even stranger. They say, look, I again am the messenger here. What I was told from somebody that's pretty high up at the White House is that Emmanuel Macron is holding up negotiations to end the Russian and Ukrainian war unless you stop speaking about his wife.
That's crazy.
That's wild.
What?
Whoa.
What are you saying? What are we even speaking about? What do you mean negotiations between Russia and Ukraine?
Stop the truth bombs.
I'm just
and then
like,
we'll stop all the bombs.
looking into a story at my house. I've got a very small team here, and you're telling me that somehow negotiations are being held up and it needs to be communicated to me that I got to stop talking about Brigitte?
I wonder if they figured on her admitting this publicly is because it's such an odd look to be at the center of what they tried to start as World War III, the first attempt at World War III a couple years back. And they're admitting to her. I wonder if they figured she would go turn public with it. You know, hey, this
That's
is
so
what they
crazy.
told me.
Can you imagine having that moral dilemma? It's like, yeah, so thousands of Ukrainians and Russians are gonna die unless you stop your little podcast about the transgender Macron. It's like,
But it's not true though.
like what do you even do? Like, yeah.
But I mean, it's not true. Meaning, what this shows me is this. So we have to have a real discussion on democracy here, because we're doing our book. By the way, shout out to JC. Is that his name? Is JC, right? His initials.
Yeah. Which, by the way, he still hasn't responded yet. I don't know if it's his initials, but it's the first two letters of his email. So.
Okay, well, JC.
You know who you are. You won the Kindle.
Yeah, you won the Kindle from our book club on Sunday, and I was really shocked that the video did like 80,000 views, because I thought the book club would do like 5,000 views, but apparently you guys all like the book. But Buchanan was talking about in our last book club, where the right went wrong, that, we've accepted the fact that our governments in the United States don't represent the people. Like through NAFTA, the corporations and the oligarchs essentially lobby our politicians. They, move manufacturing and skilled labor out of the country for cheaper products, cheaper prices. And then in return, instead of, trying to help us so that now we have cheaper products, they hyperinflate the money. They allow corporations to get into the housing market and fix the market. So not only do we lose our jobs, but we don't get to benefit from the cheap products because inflation, devalues our currency. And then we've realized that, even though 3/4 of Americans want to stop immigration, we know even the last 4 years before Trump, they just opened the borders regardless. So he goes, we've gotten to a position to where Republicans and Democrats know our government doesn't represent us. And so a democracy today appears to be, like, when we look at this, you're telling me you could negotiate to end a war, but you need a podcaster to delete a video. That doesn't sound like you're leading on behalf of your people, the Ukrainian people. It doesn't sound like you're on behalf of the free world or even the West as an idea. It sounds like you are governing based upon your clique, your status, your, bourgeois reputation. And it's like democracy. Is it really a representation of the people, or is it a way to control the people and make it appear like there is not a tyrannical government in charge because the elections are fixed? And when you see that they're flippantly taking, by the way, close to 1 million guys have died or been maimed in this war. From last time I heard, it was like 960,000 white Christian Orthodox men at behest of a non-Christian leader. By the way, what religion is he? Mormon. Those Mormons. Zelensky, classic Mormon name. No, but I kind of want to touch on that. It's like these things, you think it might have been intentional. I don't know if I agree with that. I think that this is the curtain being moved on the Wizard of Oz. Like, I think sometimes they just let it slip, and they don't realize Candace isn't in their clique. She's not in their club, so she doesn't follow those rules like Tim Pool said, where it's like, it's house rules or what is it? Chatham rules? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the mouse rules.
Yeah. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, George Carlin once said it. He's like, look, they have a club and you and I ain't in it. And he's probably a lot closer to being in it than you or I. But the point is, that's probably what they figured on. I'd also I'd be the douche to just point out that with all of the christening of democracy and the presupposing of democracy as the right form of government that the boomers have accustomed our ears to, it's even in the Star Wars films. We're not a democracy. We were never intended to be a democracy. This is supposed to be a constitutional republic. Aristotle, 2,500 years ago, noted it, democracy, as a corrupted form of a polity. It's never been good. It's always the corrupted form of a good government. That's what it is. And so I'm sick of the boomers conditioning us to think democracy is good.